In the heart of an ancient world, teetering on the edge of collapse, one kingdom rose with unshakable force: Babylon. Led by a ruthless conqueror, King Nebuchadnezzar, its armies swept across the Middle East like a storm of iron and fire. No nation could withstand its might, and eventually the holy city of Jerusalem fell. But this was no ordinary defeat. It marked the beginning of one of the most mysterious and powerful stories in all of Scripture. A story where God's sovereignty would clash with the pride of empires, where a handful of faithful men would defy kings, flames, and lions, not with swords, but with conviction. It began when the Babylonian forces breached the walls of Jerusalem. The temple was pillaged, sacred items were ripped from holy hands and carried into a foreign land to be mocked in pagan shrines. The people of Judah, broken and scattered, were dragged into exile. Among those taken were the most promising young men, sons of royalty and nobility. They were chosen not just for their lineage, but for their appearance, intellect, and potential. Babylon wasn't simply trying to conquer a nation, it wanted to erase a culture, a faith, a god. And to do that, they would start with the youth. Daniel was one of them. Young, brilliant, and devout, Daniel was handpicked to serve in the king's court. Alongside him were three others: Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But their Babylonian captors didn't stop at relocating them. They stripped them of their names, their identities, and gave them new ones tied to pagan deities. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael was renamed Meshach, and Azariah became Abednego. To serve the king, they had to be transformed, indoctrinated into Babylonian language, literature, customs, and religion. For 3 years, they would be immersed in a system designed to erase their past and reshape their future. And the final touch? The king ordered that they eat from his table, meat and wine blessed in honor of Babylonian gods. But Daniel made a decision. A quiet, bold, irreversible decision. He resolved in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food or wine. He would not abandon the commands of his God, not for status, not for safety, not even for survival. It was a small act, seemingly insignificant in the eyes of men, but in heaven it echoed with power. He asked the chief official for permission to avoid the royal meals. At first, the man hesitated. Refusing the king's orders could mean death. But somehow, and this was no accident, God had given Daniel favor in the eyes of this official. There was something different about him, something unshakable. Daniel proposed a test. "Give us only vegetables and water for 10 days, he said. "Then compare our appearance with the others who eat the king's food. Judge for yourself." Reluctantly, the official agreed. 10 days passed. And when the young men were examined, Daniel and his friends looked stronger, healthier, and more alert than all the others. The diet continued, and with it came a blessing far greater than physical health. God poured into them knowledge, wisdom, and understanding beyond anything Babylon could teach. And to Daniel, God gave something more. A gift no school could provide, the ability to interpret dreams and visions. It was the beginning of something divine, a crack in the foundation of an empire that believed it held all the power. These 4 young men stood not just in defiance of Babylon, but as symbols of what it means to stand with God when the world wants to erase him. And the story was only beginning. Before we continue deeper into this incredible journey, take a moment to reflect. In a world trying to redefine who you are, will you remain true to what you believe? If this story is already gripping your heart, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay with us, because the flames are coming, and so is the lion's den. As the years passed, Babylon's glory only intensified. The empire stretched farther, its palaces rose higher, and its king, Nebuchadnezzar, became more intoxicated with power, pride, and self-worship. No one questioned his rule. No one defied his orders. In his eyes, his reign was not merely political, it was divine. It was in that climate of arrogance that Nebuchadnezzar issued a decree that would test the very souls of men. He ordered the construction of a colossal statue, an image entirely made of gold, over 90 feet tall and dazzling in the sun. It was placed on the plain of Dura, in a location vast enough to accommodate thousands. The statue was more than art. It was a command: worship or die. All the governors, nobles, military commanders, judges and officials from every province of the kingdom were summoned to a grand dedication ceremony. The order was simple. As soon as music played, the sound of trumpets, harps, flutes and every kind of instrument, all people of every nation and language were to bow before the golden image. Refusal meant one thing: being thrown into a blazing furnace, an inferno prepared for those who dared challenge the throne. And then the music began. Across the field, people dropped to their knees. Wave after wave of bodies fell in submission, but 3 men remained standing, alone, exposed, unbending: Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Word of their defiance spread like wildfire. Certain officials, jealous of their positions and eager to crush the faith they represented, ran to the king. "O king," they said with venomous smiles, "there are certain Jews whom you have appointed to positions of authority who refuse to serve your gods or worship the image you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar, livid, ordered the men to be brought before him. Rage boiled in his voice as he offered them one last chance: "Bow or be thrown into the furnace immediately. And tell me, what God could possibly save you from my hand?" But the response he received silenced the heavens. "O king," they said, "we do not need to defend ourselves in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. But even if he does not, know this: we will not serve your gods or bow to your image." There are moments in history when time seems to stop, when courage overshadows fear. This was one of them. The king's fury exploded, his face twisted with rage. He commanded the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The heat was so intense that the very soldiers who carried the 3 men to the edge of the flames were consumed by its power. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fully clothed and tightly bound, were hurled into the fire. And then, silence. No screams, no smoke, no smell of burning flesh. Instead, something impossible happened. Nebuchadnezzar, who had been watching with arrogant satisfaction, suddenly rose in disbelief. His eyes widened. He turned to his advisors and said, "Didn't we throw 3 men into the fire?" "Yes, your majesty," they replied. "Then why," he whispered, "do I see 4 men walking freely in the flames, unbound, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a divine being?" The king approached the furnace and called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out!" And they did. They walked out of the fire without a single burn. Their clothes were untouched. Not even the scent of smoke lingered. In a moment, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd, the officials, the rulers, all stood in stunned silence. The same fire meant to destroy them had become the evidence of divine power. Nebuchadnezzar, trembling, declared before all, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied my command. Therefore I decree that anyone who speaks against this God shall be punished severely, for no other God can save in this way." And then he promoted them. The ones the world tried to burn were now lifted higher than ever. Faith that stood firm under pressure had not only survived, it had transformed a kingdom. But the pride of kings does not die easily. Nebuchadnezzar, though shaken, had not yet surrendered. Dreams, divine, disturbing, and prophetic, were on the horizon. And this time, even Daniel would tremble at what was coming. If this story of unshakable faith in the face of death moves you, take a moment now to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next, because soon God will humble the proudest king on earth in a way no one saw coming. Nebuchadnezzar's empire was vast, his power unmatched, and his ego insatiable. But even kings who rule with an iron fist are not beyond the reach of the Almighty. One night, as the world around him slept, the mighty ruler of Babylon was shaken from his bed by a dream unlike any other. It was vivid, haunting, and left him gasping for breath in the darkness. He didn't just want answers, he demanded them. But there was a twist. The king couldn't remember the dream, and yet he was terrified by it. Desperate, he summoned the magicians, astrologers, and wise men of Babylon. They stood before him, trembling under the weight of his fury, as he made an impossible request. "Tell me what I dreamed," he said, "and then tell me what it means. If you can't, you will be torn limb from limb, and your homes will be reduced to rubble." The wise men pleaded, "O king, no man on earth can do what you ask, only the gods, and they do not dwell among us." Their words sealed their fate. Furious, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the execution of every wise man in the kingdom. Among them, Daniel and his companions. When the soldiers came to carry out the sentence, Daniel didn't panic. He asked for time, not to scheme, not to run, but to pray. He gathered his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and together they cried out to the God of heaven, not for favor, not for promotion, but for mercy. That night, as the city of Babylon slept under the threat of royal wrath, heaven answered. In a vision, God revealed to Daniel the very dream that had tormented the king and its terrifying interpretation. When Daniel awoke, he didn't rush to the palace. He fell to his knees in worship. "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever," he prayed. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and raises up others. He reveals deep and hidden things, for light dwells with him. Only then did Daniel go to the captain of the guard. "Take me to the king," he said, "and I will tell him his dream and what it means." Standing before Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel made one thing clear. No wise man, no magician, no astrologer can reveal this mystery, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. And then he began, "You, O king, saw a massive statue. It was dazzling, terrifying. The head was made of pure gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet a mixture of iron and clay. As you watched, a stone, cut not by human hands, struck the statue at its feet. The whole statue crumbled into dust, and that stone became a great mountain that filled the entire earth." Daniel paused. "This, O king, is what you dreamed. Now let me tell you what it means." He explained that each part of the statue represented a kingdom. Babylon, the head of gold, was the first. After it would rise another, then another, and yet another, each one weaker in material, yet more ruthless in rule. But all would fall. And then would come a kingdom unlike any other, one established by God himself, a kingdom that would crush all others and endure forever. The stone that shattered the statue was no earthly power. It was divine, eternal, unstoppable. Silence filled the throne room. Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man in the world, fell to the ground before a Hebrew exile and worshipped. "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings," he declared, "and the revealer of mysteries." He elevated Daniel to the highest position in the kingdom, making him ruler over all the wise men of Babylon. At Daniel's request, his 3 friends were promoted as well. But though the king acknowledged Daniel's God with his lips, pride still ruled his heart. And pride, when left unbroken, leads only to one place: a fall. Not long after, Nebuchadnezzar was given another dream, this one even more disturbing. He saw a great tree towering to the heavens, visible to all the earth. It provided shelter and food for animals and people alike. But then, a heavenly messenger descended and commanded, "Cut it down." Daniel, called once again to interpret, stood silently, troubled by the meaning. Finally, he spoke with sorrow. "You, O king, are that tree. You have grown strong and mighty, but because of your arrogance, you will be driven away from people. You will live among the animals. You will eat grass like cattle. 7 years will pass until you acknowledge that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men." Daniel pleaded with the king, "Repent, do what is right, show mercy to the oppressed. Perhaps then your prosperity will continue." But pride does not listen. A year passed. One evening, Nebuchadnezzar walked on the roof of his palace and looked over Babylon with satisfaction. "Is this not the great Babylon I have built by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Before the words even left his mouth, a voice thundered from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, your royal authority has been taken from you." In that instant, his sanity vanished. He fled the palace like a madman, crawling on the ground. His hair grew long like feathers, his nails thick like claws. He lived in the wild, stripped of his throne, his honor and his mind, until one day he lifted his eyes to heaven, and in that moment of surrender his reason returned. "I praised the Most High," he said. "I honored and glorified him who lives forever." His kingdom was restored, his splendor returned, but his heart was different. No longer defiant, no longer proud. He no longer boasted of Babylon, but of the God who humbles kings and lifts the lowly. Are you beginning to see the pattern? God will speak through dreams, fire and fury, but he always speaks, and those who listen are never the same. If this moment of divine confrontation speaks to your soul, don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and stay close, because Babylon isn't done shaking, and neither is God. Time passed, kings came and went, and Babylon, though still proud, began to rot from within. The mighty Nebuchadnezzar had died. And on the throne now sat Belshazzar, a man who wore a crown, but not the wisdom that should come with it. Arrogant, reckless, and indulgent, he treated the throne of Babylon like a stage for his own vanity. One night, in the heart of his palace, Belshazzar threw a feast unlike anything Babylon had seen. 1,000 of his nobles drank and laughed alongside the king. Golden lamps flickered on stone walls, and the air was thick with wine, perfume, and arrogance. But in the middle of the celebration, Belshazzar made a fatal decision. He commanded his servants to bring the sacred goblets that his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, had stolen from the temple of the God of Israel in Jerusalem. These were holy vessels, consecrated for worship, and now they were to be desecrated. The goblets were brought out, and Belshazzar and his guests drank from them, mocking God as they praised idols of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. And then it happened. A hand appeared, not a figure, not a man, just a hand. It hovered near the lampstand and began writing on the plaster of the wall right before the king's eyes. No one else moved. No one else spoke. Belshazzar froze. The color drained from his face. His body trembled. His knees knocked together. The music stopped. The laughter died. Terror had entered the room. Desperate, the king screamed for his astrologers, his wise men, his magicians, all the experts of Babylon. "Whoever can read this writing and tell me what it means," he proclaimed, "will be clothed in purple, wear a chain of gold, and be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." But none could read it. None could interpret it. The message burned on the wall, silent but unshakable. Then the queen, perhaps Belshazzar's mother, stepped into the chamber. Her voice was calm, firm. She had seen something like this before. "There is a man in your kingdom," she said, "in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, he had insight, wisdom, and understanding like that of the gods themselves. His name is Daniel." And so, once again, The king of Babylon called for the Hebrew exile. Daniel was now much older, a man seasoned by fire, dreams, and divine revelation. He stood before Belshazzar, unimpressed, unshaken. The king offered him riches and power if he could read the writing. But Daniel, with piercing clarity, replied, "Keep your gifts, give your rewards to someone else, but I will read the writing for you." Before translating the message, Daniel reminded Belshazzar of a truth he had tried to forget. You knew what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, how his heart was filled with pride, and how he was brought low until he acknowledged the Most High God. Yet you, his successor, have not humbled yourself. You have lifted yourself against the Lord of heaven. You brought the sacred vessels of his temple to your banquet. You drank from them. You praised gods of stone and metal, but you did not honor the God who holds your very breath in his hands. Then Daniel turned to the wall. The room held its breath. The words are Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. Silence. This is what they mean, Daniel said. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Parsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. A pronouncement of doom, a sentence from heaven, a king condemned. And yet, even in the face of judgment, Belshazzar clung to appearances. He clothed Daniel in royal garments, placed gold around his neck, and proclaimed him third in command. But by the time the sun set again, Belshazzar was dead. That very night, Babylon fell. The river that protected its walls had been diverted. The Persian army slipped in through the dry channel. The city was taken, and with it the empire collapsed. Darius the Mede took the throne. Babylon, the golden head of the statue, had been shattered, just as the dream had foretold. But while kings fell and empires crumbled, Daniel remained. Because Daniel's strength was not rooted in the rise and fall of men, it was anchored in the eternal. And even in a new empire, with a new ruler and new threats, Daniel's story was far from over. God was not finished showing the world what it meant to serve him without compromise. If this moment of divine judgment opened your eyes to something deeper, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter will take us from royal palaces to the mouths of lions and beyond. Empires change, thrones rise and fall, but men of conviction, they endure. Daniel had served faithfully under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, outlasted the pride of Belshazzar, and now stood with favor before Darius, the new ruler of the Medo-Persian Empire. Despite being a foreigner, despite his age, despite the passing of generations, Daniel's character remained untouchable. Darius, recognizing this rare loyalty and wisdom, planned to place Daniel over the entire realm, a position second only to the king himself. But power, even when earned, stirs envy. The other officials, governors, and administrators burned with jealousy. They scoured Daniel's records. They searched for corruption, negligence, even a single error, but they found none. Daniel was faithful in his duties, unwavering in his integrity, and above all, unashamed of his God. So they devised a darker plan. If we cannot find fault in his actions, they whispered, we'll find it in his devotion. The trap was subtle. Disguised as a patriotic gesture, they approached King Darius with flattering words. "O king, may you live forever. All your officials have agreed that you should issue a decree, a royal law, that for the next 30 days no one may pray to any god or man except to you, O king. Anyone who disobeys shall be thrown into the den of lions." Flattery blinds even the wise. Without realizing the true intent, Darius signed the law, sealing it with the authority of the Medes and Persians, an unchangeable decree. The snare was set. And Daniel, he knew. He heard the law. He understood the risk. He understood the cost. But nothing changed. He returned to his home, opened the windows of his upper room facing Jerusalem, and knelt in prayer. Not once, not secretly, but 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks, seeking mercy, and remaining faithful. He could have hidden, he could have postponed, he could have rationalized, but Daniel feared no lion, no law, no man, only God. The conspirators watched. They waited, and when they saw him praying, they rushed to the king with wicked delight. "O king," they said, "did you not sign a law prohibiting prayer to anyone but yourself?" Darius nodded. "Then know this, Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, has not respected your decree. He continues to pray 3 times a day." The king was devastated. Too late, he saw the trap. All day, Darius struggled to find a way to save Daniel. He consulted the law, he sought counsel, but the decree was sealed, it could not be altered. As the sun set, the verdict was delivered. Daniel would be thrown into the lion's den. The king approached him with sorrow in his eyes. "May your God, whom you serve continually," he whispered, "rescue you." Daniel said nothing. Guards rolled away the heavy stone. They bound the old man's hands, and in silence they lowered him into the dark pit, a cavern echoing with the low, hungry growls of beasts bred for death. The stone was rolled back, sealed, and the night began. Darius returned to his palace, but he found no rest, no food, no music, no sleep. His thoughts were consumed by the man who chose obedience over survival, a man who prayed, even when praying cost everything. At the first light of dawn, the king rushed to the den. He called out with a trembling voice, not knowing if he would hear silence or something else. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" And then, from within the shadows, a voice. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I wronged you." The king collapsed in joy. Daniel was alive, not a scratch, not a bruise, not even a tear in his robe. The lions that had torn others limb from limb had laid at his feet like docile lambs, because heaven had entered the den before Daniel ever did. Darius ordered him lifted out. The seal was broken, light poured into the pit, and Daniel emerged untouched, a testimony of divine protection. But the story didn't end there. Justice still had its place. The king turned to the men who had plotted Daniel's death, and with one wave of his hand, they, along with their families, were thrown into the same den. The lions, starved by divine restraint, now roared with unleashed fury. Before their bodies even touched the floor, they were crushed. Then Darius issued a proclamation to every nation and people under his dominion. "May you prosper greatly. I decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." Daniel's faith had not only saved his life, it had turned the heart of an empire. But beyond lions and kings, beyond fire and dreams, a deeper vision was waiting. One not just for Babylon or Persia, but for all of history and all of humanity. If this display of divine power stirred something in your spirit, make sure you're subscribed and activate notifications. What Daniel sees next will challenge everything we know about time, kingdoms, and the end of days. Daniel had walked with kings. He had stood in fire. He had stared into the eyes of lions and lived to tell about it, but nothing, not exile, not empires, not even miracles, could have prepared him for what he was about to see. In the first year of Belshazzar's reign, Daniel was given a vision. Not a dream of personal destiny, not a warning for one ruler, but a sweeping revelation of world history and the final judgment. He wrote it all down. "I looked," Daniel said, "and saw the 4 winds of heaven stirring up the great sea, and out of the chaos came 4 great beasts, each different from the other. The first was like a lion, fierce and dominant, but it had wings like an eagle. As Daniel watched, the wings were torn off, and it stood like a man, and a human mind was given to it. Then came the second beast, a bear, raised up on one side, with 3 ribs in its mouth. A voice thundered, "Get up and devour much flesh." Next emerged a third beast, a leopard, swift and terrifying. It had 4 wings on its back and 4 heads. It was given authority to rule. And then came the fourth. There are no words to truly describe it. It was more dreadful than the rest, with iron teeth that crushed and devoured its victims, trampling whatever remained. It had 10 horns on its head. While Daniel stared, another horn, smaller yet more arrogant, rose among them, displacing 3. This horn had eyes like a man and a mouth that spoke boastful things. As the beast roared and the horn raged, the vision changed. Daniel saw thrones set in place, and one seated upon them, the Ancient of Days. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair pure like wool. His throne was a fiery blaze, and its wheels a burning flame. A river of fire flowed before him. Thousands upon thousands stood in reverence, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Daniel watched as the arrogant horn continued to speak, but judgment came swiftly. The fourth beast was slain, its body destroyed and thrown into the burning fire. The dominion of the other beasts was stripped away, though they were allowed to live for a time. Then, something even more astonishing. "I saw," Daniel said, "one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. And to him was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations, peoples, and languages worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, one that will never pass away. His kingdom is one that will never be destroyed." Daniel's heart trembled. This was no simple dream. This was the unveiling of the divine plan, and of the conflict between heaven and earth, between truth and rebellion, between the saints and the beasts. Daniel approached one of the heavenly beings in his vision and asked, "What does all of this mean?" And he was told, "These 4 great beasts are 4 kingdoms that will rise from the earth. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever." Still shaken, Daniel asked about the fourth beast, the most terrifying of them all. "What about the 10 horns?" he asked. "And what about the smaller horn that uprooted 3 others, spoke against the Most High, and waged war against the saints?" The answer came, clear and solemn. The fourth beast is a 4th kingdom. It will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will arise from this kingdom. After them, another king will rise, different from the others. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High. He will oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and laws. The saints will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But then, deliverance. The court will sit. His power will be taken away, destroyed forever. And the kingdom, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the people of the Most High. Their kingdom will be everlasting, and all rulers will worship and obey them. Daniel's face paled. His thoughts troubled him. He kept the matter in his heart, meditating on what it meant and when it would come. But the visions did not end there. Another came, one rooted in conflict and conquest. Daniel saw a ram with 2 horns, one higher than the other. It charged westward, northward, and southward. No beast could stand against it. Then a goat appeared, racing across the earth without touching the ground. It had a single horn between its eyes. With fury, it struck the ram and shattered its horns. The ram collapsed, helpless. But the goat's great horn was broken, and in its place rose 4 others. From one of them emerged a little horn, one that grew in power, reached toward the heavens, and desecrated the temple. It stopped the daily sacrifices. It trampled truth. It prospered through deceit. Daniel heard one angel ask another, How long will this vision last? The rebellion, the desecration, the trampling? The reply, 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be restored. Shaken to his core, Daniel collapsed. He lay sick for days. The visions were not parables. They were warnings. The beasts were kings. The horns were rulers. The Son of Man, the Redeemer. The court, judgment. The fire, purification. And the kingdom, it would belong to the saints, but only after war. If this glimpse of eternal judgment and divine triumph is stirring your spirit, don't stop here. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow this story to its conclusion, because Daniel hasn't finished writing, and God hasn't finished revealing. Daniel was no longer a young man. Decades had passed since he had first been taken captive to Babylon. He had served kings, interpreted dreams, survived plots, and witnessed the collapse of empires. But now, with a worn heart and eyes full of longing, Daniel turned his attention not to the courts of men, but to the promises of God. While studying the scrolls of the prophets, he found something that shook him. In the writings of Jeremiah, it was written that Jerusalem's desolation, the exile, the ruins, the silence in the holy city would last 70 years. Daniel did the math, and the time was almost complete. But instead of celebrating, he wept. He didn't assume deliverance. He didn't claim entitlement. He fell on his face and prayed. He fasted, wore sackcloth, and covered himself in ashes, mourning for the sins of his people and pleading for mercy. Not for himself, but for the nation, for the city, for the sanctuary. "O Lord, the great and awesome God," he cried, "who keeps his covenant of love. We have sinned and done wrong. We have turned away from your commands. We have not listened to your prophets. Righteousness belongs to you, but shame covers us. We do not plead because we are righteous, but because of your great mercy." He prayed not like a man seeking answers, but like a man desperate for reconciliation. As the final words left his lips, something extraordinary happened. While he was still speaking, still pouring out his heart, a figure appeared before him, moving with the speed of heaven. It was Gabriel, the same messenger who had interpreted his earlier visions. This time, he came not to explain beasts and horns, but to reveal the heartbeat of redemptive history. "Daniel," he said, "you are greatly beloved. I have come to give you insight and understanding. From the moment you began to pray, a word was given, and I have come to tell you, because you are precious before God." Then Gabriel spoke words that would echo through centuries. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. This was no ordinary prophecy. It was a timeline, one that stretched from the rebuilding of Jerusalem to the arrival of the Anointed One, the Messiah. Gabriel continued, "From the issuing of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One comes, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be rebuilt with streets and trenches, but in troubled times. After the 62 weeks, the Anointed One will be cut off and will have nothing." Daniel listened, his spirit burning. The Messiah would come, but not to rule, to be cut off, to be rejected, to be poured out like a lamb for the sins of many. Then Gabriel spoke of destruction. "The people of the ruler who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations are decreed. A covenant would be made with many for one final week, but halfway through the sacrifices would cease. A desolator would rise, and judgment would fall." The message was clear, sir, and terrible. There would be redemption, but there would also be ruin. There would be a savior, but there would also be betrayal. There would be a kingdom, but first, blood, silence, war, waiting. And still, Daniel's heart beat not with fear, but with faith. God had not forgotten his people. God had not abandoned the covenant. God had not closed the book. The 70 weeks would unfold exactly as foretold, and even the darkest days would be under divine control. But heaven was not finished speaking. Years later, during the reign of Cyrus, Daniel received yet another revelation. This time, after fasting for 3 weeks, no meat, no wine, no perfume, no comfort, he stood by the riverbank and was struck by a vision of pure majesty. He saw a man clothed in linen with a belt of gold around his waist. His body was like a gem, his face like lightning, his eyes like flames, his arms and legs like burnished bronze, and his voice like the roar of a multitude. Daniel collapsed. The others with him fled in terror, though they saw nothing. The man touched him, lifted him to his knees, and said, "Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you. From the first day you humbled yourself, your words were heard, and I have come in response." But the message came with a mystery. "For 21 days, the prince of the kingdom of Persia resisted me, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. Now I have come to explain what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come." Daniel could barely breathe. He was overwhelmed. The angel strengthened him and repeated the words that had echoed since the beginning. "You are greatly loved. Be strong. Be courageous." And then he revealed what was written in the book of truth. Kingdoms would rise, kings would betray, alliances would shatter, wars would rage. But none of it would be outside the reach of heaven. Every move on the chessboard of history had already been written, and at the appointed time, the end would come. If this prophetic vision of the Messiah and the fate of nations speaks to something eternal in your heart, don't turn away now. Subscribe and enable notifications. What comes next will lead us into the final confrontation between heaven and earth, and into the glorious promise that has no end. Daniel had seen kingdoms fall. He had witnessed empires burn. He had heard the voice of angels, walked with the favor of kings, and dreamed dreams that reached beyond time. But now, as his journey neared its end, God gave him one final vision. A revelation not just for his people, not just for Babylon, but for the entire world. This time the vision didn't come in a dream or at the moment of prayer. It came while Daniel stood by the river, weary and worn, but ready. And what he saw would shake the very foundation of human history. A heavenly being spoke. There will be 3 more kings in Persia, and then a 4th, far richer than all the others. His power will stir up the empire against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will rise and rule with great authority, doing as he pleases. But his kingdom would not last. At the height of his strength, it would be broken and divided, not to his descendants, but to others. And from these fragments, war would erupt. The king of the south would rise, and then the king of the north. They would clash in violent waves. Alliances would be made and broken. Daughters would be given in marriage to secure peace, and then betrayed. Armies would march, cities would fall, treasuries would be plundered, and through it all, power would shift like sand in the wind. Yet behind every move, behind every betrayal and every rise to power, was a shadow, a presence darker than any king. From among the kings would rise one more corrupt, more cunning, and more blasphemous than all who came before. This man would not seize power by force, but by intrigue. He would flatter and deceive. He would sweep aside armies and defile the holy covenant. He would invade the temple, bring an end to daily sacrifices, and erect a desecration that would spread destruction. The faithful would suffer, the wise would fall. But even in persecution, they would shine. Some would stumble, not because they were weak, but because they were being refined, purified, prepared. Then came the final prophecy. At that time, the angel said, "Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. A time of chaos, a time of darkness, a time when evil will seem to triumph, but it will not be the end, because in the depths of the turmoil, something unimaginable will happen. But at that time, your people, Everyone whose name is found written in the book will be delivered. And then came the promise that echoed beyond the grave. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. The dead will rise, and the faithful, they will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars, forever and ever. But Daniel wasn't given every answer. He saw two figures standing on opposite sides of the river. One asked, "How long will it be until these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The man in linen, standing above the waters, raised both hands to heaven and swore by him who lives forever, "It will be for a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." Daniel asked again, "My Lord, what will be the outcome of all this?" But the answer was firm. "Go your way, Daniel. The words are sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand." He was given a final number. From the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,190 days. Blessed is the one who waits and reaches the end, 1,335 days. Then came the final instruction. "But as for you, Daniel, go your way until the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance." And with that, the book was sealed. Daniel returned to silence, but the words he recorded would not be forgotten. They would be read by generations of the faithful. They would be studied, debated, feared, and hoped upon. They would point to a Messiah who would be cut off, to a kingdom not made by hands, to a throne of fire, and to a resurrection that cannot be stopped. Daniel never saw Jerusalem rebuilt. He never returned home. But he saw further than any king ever could. He saw the end, and beyond the end, the beginning of eternity. If the story of Daniel, of unwavering faith, divine revelation, and eternal hope has spoken to your heart, now is the time to act. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this journey with others. Because what Daniel saw is coming, and when it comes, may we all be found faithful.